Morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for coming to Staines Masonic Hall for this wonderful talk about Freemasons of the American Wild West. Before we start, there is a couple of emergency exits between there. There's an exit there, and that's an emergency exit there in case of fire. There's no fire drills around, so I'm told.
Just follow me.
Yeah, just follow Mike behind him. But I'd like to welcome you to Staines, as I said, and also to Worship Brother Mike Kern, who's going to do the talk on the Freemasons of the Wild West. Hope you all enjoy.
Thank you. Well, good morning. The American Wild West, I would suggest there are words which are familiar to all of us who read comics, watch films, television, when we were young. And I think you'll agree there's something perhaps a little bit special about those words, Wild West. It conjures up thoughts of cowboys, Indians, wagon trains, gunslingers, sheriffs, outlaws, and really draws on the imagination of the young boy. Today, I will tell you about some of the men who gained fame during those early days in America. Frontiersmen, plainsmen, cowboys, Indians, and then I'll move on to the film stars and others who immortalised the Wild West. But all with the one thing in common: they were Freemasons. I'll start off with the Battle of the Alamo because there were three American Freemasons, truly historic figures who took part in that battle. The garrison commander, Lieutenant Colonel William Travis, Davy Crockett, and Jim Bowie. Texas, way back in 1835, was simply a province of Mexico, but was populated mainly by Americans. American settlers who really wanted independence from Mexico and rebelled against really strict and enforced Mexican laws. The settlers, well, they formed an army and took up arms against the Mexicans and did win subsequent victories. But, and there's a big but, this resulted in the Mexicans sending a large army to Texas. It was led by General Santa Anna, who was determined to subdue the province. This Alamo building, it was a Roman Catholic mission and frontier compound near San Antonio, which the new Texan army had taken from the Mexicans. Morning. Following a 13-day siege, the Mexican army launched an attack on the Alamo. The Texans, well, they were greatly outnumbered and the mission was soon captured. The Texans, well, they fought bravely, but when the mission was overrun, those still alive surrendered. But General Santa Anna then cruelly ordered all the American defenders to be executed, and their bodies to be stacked and burned in nearby wood. 187 Americans died that day. Only 2 Americans survived, it is thought: Susanna Dickinson and a baby daughter, Angelina. The baby became known as the Baby of the Alamo. There is a story that her husband, Almiron, who was a Freemason and a member of Bolivar Lodge in Tennessee, told his wife to display his Masonic apron when they were overrun by the Mexican troops, which she did, and this is why their lives were saved. Now, I don't know if that's true, but it's a nice story. General Santa Anna, on his cruelty, inspired many Americans from other states with a desire for revenge to join the Texan army. And just 6 weeks after the fall of the Alamo, the Texan army was ambushed. They fought and defended the Mexicans at the Battle of San Jacinto. 600 Mexicans were killed in that battle, just 6 Americans. The American battle cry was apparently unforgettable and unrelenting. It was "Remember the Alamo, remember the Alamo." That army was led by Sam Houston, who was a Freemason, who was a member of Cumberland Lodge in Nashville, Tennessee. General Santa Anna, he was captured, and the battle ended the Texas Revolution. There is a story that General Santa Anna was a Freemason, and that he saved his own life by giving Masonic signs, but the story has never been substantiated, and there are no records to be found of his actually being a Freemason. I mean, after what he did, his cruelty, if he was a Freemason, we would have excluded him anyway, wouldn't we? Nasty man. Good morning, please come in. We move on to Lieutenant Colonel William Travis, the Alamo Garrison commander. He joined the Alabama militia and later became a lieutenant colonel in the Texan Army. The report is that Travis died of a single gunshot wound to his forehead while defending the north wall of the mission. As a Freemason, he was a member of Alabama Lodge number 3. Towards the end of the battle, Travis called the troops of his garrison together, and he told them, "We must die. Our business is not to make a fruitless effort to save our lives, but to choose the manner of our death." And with that, he made a sweep with his sword and drew a line in the sand, asking all who would stay to cross it, and those not willing to stay not to cross it. Some were carried on stretchers, including Jim Bowie, and only one person, Moses Rhodes, a French-born soldier, did not cross that line, and he has since been known as the Coward of the Alamo. And of course he wasn't a Freemason. Well, here we have Davy Crockett, frontiersman, politician, soldier, folk hero, commonly referred to as the King of the Wild Frontier, and played in the Walt Disney television series by, can anyone tell me? Remember this fellow? Fez Parker. Crockett, he fought in the Texas Revolution and was captured at the Alamo and executed by the Mexicans. He grew up in Tennessee, where he gained a reputation for hunting and storytelling, and was famous for his ability to shoot the flame of a candle from 100 yards. Crockett gained the rank of colonel in the militia of Lawrence County, but later turned to politics and was actually elected to the US House of Representatives. He was defeated in a subsequent election and so returned to Texas. Crockett became famous in his own lifetime for larger-than-life exploits, popularised by stage plays and his storytelling with great exaggeration. I mean, he typically once stood before an audience and said, "Look at me. I can walk like an ox, run like a fox, swim like an eel, yell like an Indian, fight like a devil, and make love like a mad bull. Look at me." What a man. After his death, he continued to be credited with brazen acts of an almost mythical proportion. They did, however, lead in the 20th century to many films and television programs. As a Freemason, Davy Crockett was a member of Lodge Weekly County in Kentucky, and this is his original Masonic apron, which is still held by the Lodge. One thing I'd like to tell you about Davy Crockett is that physically he was quite unique in that he had 3 ears. He had a left ear, a right ear, and a wild front ear. Oh dear. Wasn't that terrible? This is Jim Bowie, pioneer and soldier. He played a major role in the Texas Revolution, which led to his death at the Alamo. Because of his bravery, General Santa Anna first said that Bowie's body should be buried. But then he ordered that the body be burned as a dog with the other defenders. Stories of Bowie as a fighter and frontiersman, both real and probably fictitious, have made him a legendary figure and folk hero in America. As a Freemason, he was a member of Humboldt Cottage Lodge in Louisiana. Bowie was born in Kentucky and gained this fierce reputation as a deadly duelist. His rise to fame became with a particular fight. Apparently what began as a duel between 2 other men became a general affray with everyone joining in. Bowie, he'd been shot and stabbed, and then the sheriff of Rapids Parish turned on him, and they thought that Bowie killed him with a large knife. This and other stories of Bowie's fighting and prowess with this large knife led to the widespread popularity of the Bowie knife, with Bowie being described as one of the greatest fighters in the Southwest. The names of William Travis, Davy Crockett, and Jim Bowie are included on a plaque, which is today on the San Jacinto battlefield, where they are honoured as being among the Freemasons who died at the Battle of the Alamo. There were, of course, other famous frontiersmen who were Freemasons. This is Daniel Boone, pioneer, explorer, frontiersman, whose exploits made him one of the first American folk heroes. He's most famous for his exploration and settlement in Kentucky in the late 1700s. Despite resistance from Indian tribes as Shawnee, Boone blazed his wilderness road through the Cumberland Gap and the Appalachian Mountains from North Carolina into Kentucky, where he helped form the first settlements. It was a wilderness when he got there, but by the end of the century, more than 200,000 people had migrated to Kentucky. Boone was once captured by Shawnee Indians who, because of his bravery, adopted him into their tribe. They kept him as a prisoner, but made him fight for them. 2 years later, when the Indians decided to attack a nearby fort, Boone managed to escape and won the fort, which caused the attack to fail. He later joined Washington's militia force, and it was then that he became a Freemason. There is no actual record of Boone being a Freemason, but his family said that he was. And following his death, his son Nathan exclaimed, "Father's body was conveyed to Sharon, where the funeral took place." There were no Masonic honours because, although he was a Freemason, there were then very few other Masons in that part of the country. Boone was a legend in his own lifetime, especially after accounts of his adventures were published, making him famous throughout America and Europe. Then later with the popular television shows of Daniel Boone and his exploits, played by the actor, I've already mentioned his name, no? Fez Parker. The adventures of Daniel Boone, real and legendary, certainly created him as a Wild West hero. Now this wild-looking fella is Kit Carson, frontiersman, as well as a mule skinner, Indian scout and soldier, and was apparently the best fur trapper and mounted man in the West. Carson was born in Madison County, Kentucky, and while an infant, his parents moved to Missouri, which was then nothing more than a wilderness. At the age of 15, he ran away, and he joined a party of hunters in Santa Fe, New Mexico. For 8 years, he lived the life of a plains trapper and was appointed hunter for the garrison at Bent's Ford, where he remained for 8 more years. I say Bent's Ford. Kit Carson was closely associated with Charles Bent, who was the first recorded Freemason in New Mexico and became its first governor. And it was Bent who fed the young Kit Carson with stories of fun and adventure. Next, Carson served as a guide for this chap, General Johnny Fremont. He was a Freemason who became renowned as the path maker of the West because of his expeditions, including a very famous expedition to California. Carson's public image as a hero was sealed by the Fremont expedition reports. So much so that in 1849, the first 3 Carson novels appeared, written by Charles Averill, who was a Freemason. This type of Western pulp fiction was known in America as Blood and Thunder. On his return to Taos, he was appointed as Indian agent, and was perhaps better known among the Western Indians than any other white men. He knew their habits, customs, and spoke their language, and in that role he was largely responsible for bringing about treaties with the Indians. Many general accounts of Kit Carson describe him as an outstanding, honourable person, and unlike most frontiersmen, he was apparently painfully shy, almost to the point of bashfulness. As a Freemason, he was a member of Montezuma Lodge in Santa Fe, New Mexico. He was also a member of Bent Lodge in Taos, which bore the name of his inspirational friend Charles Bent. Carson City in Nevada is named after him, and indeed there is a Carson Lodge also in Nevada. Can anyone tell me who this is? That's it, William Crowley, always known as Buffalo Bill, wasn't he? He was a trapper, pony express rider, Indian scout, bison hunter, and later theatrical showman. One of the most colourful characters of the American Old West. Cody was born in Scott County, Iowa. He was a pony express rider until becoming a government scout and guide with the Kansas Cavalry. He later contracted to furnish the Kansas Pacific Railroad with all the buffalo meat required to feed the labourers engaged in the railroad construction. And in a short period of 8 months, he killed 4,280 buffaloes, earning it the nickname Buffalo Bill. He then became a government scout and guide operating against the Sioux and Cheyenne Indians, coming to fame when he actually fought and killed Yellow Hand, the Cheyenne chief, in a hand-to-hand knife fight. Cody served as a general in the Nebraska National Guard during the Sioux Indian outbreaks, and was also involved in the famed Battle of Wounded Knee. He later became world famous for his Wild West shows, which toured throughout America and also in Great Britain and Europe. Audiences were enthusiastic about seeing something of the American Wild West and crowded to the shows. William Cody is a very active Freemason. This is his Grand Lodge certificate, and was a member of Platte Valley Lodge in Nebraska. He joined York Rite and became a member of Euphrates chapter in North Platte. He also became a Master Mason, and those of you that are in that Masonic order know that you have a mark. Well, he was enabled to choose his own individual mark, and I suppose appropriately selected a buffalo head. This is Pat Garrett, bartender, lawman, customs agent, but it was as a US Marshal that he became famous, because it was then that he shot and killed one of America's most notorious outlaws, Billy the Kid, also known as William Bonney. Little is known of Billy the Kid's early youth, but he soon entered into this life of crime, eventually heading west and joining a violent gang that terrorized the Lincoln County area. Billy the Kid was reported to have killed 21 men and became an outlaw with a price on his head, but he was eventually captured and sentenced to death for the murder of a sheriff. But he escaped after killing guards, but was tracked down by Pat Garrett, who shot and killed him. The story of Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid is, of course, classic folklore of the American Wild West, and has been frequently used for books, films, television. Pat Garrett, as a Freemason, was a member of Roswell Lodge in New Mexico, and on his death was buried in the Masonic Cemetery at Las Cruces in New Mexico. But, as you can imagine, Billy the Kid was not a Freemason. This is the town of Deadwood, the Black Hills of Dakota. It was a notorious and violent town of the old Wild West, but is now quite famous for the historic Mount Moriah Cemetery. In this cemetery are buried some really famous characters, such as Wild Bill Hickok and Calamity Jane. Who played Calamity Jane in that famous film?
Doris Day.
Doris Day, yeah. This is Mount Moriah Cemetery, which was founded by prominent Deadwood citizens who were Freemasons. It takes its name from Mount Moriah, from the site on which King Solomon's Temple was built. There is a selection in the cemetery, especially where Freemasons were buried, and many of the cemetery roads have Masonic names. Can anyone tell me who this chap is? Looks familiar, doesn't he? Wyatt? Wyatt. One of the most celebrated legends of the Wild West. He was a wild child. He was arrested any number of times for criminal acts, but somehow always avoided punishment. But he had a restless nature, and as a young man roamed the frontier, gambling, drinking, and making his home in saloons and brothels. Dreadful man. But when he was 28, he and his brother Virgil began working for the law by helping to tame the wild cowboy culture of the territory, which eventually led to Wyatt becoming the city marshal of Dodge City in Kansas. Wyatt was a lifelong gambler, and when he later joined his brothers in Tombstone, he met again with another gambler, Doc Holliday, and they became good friends. Having established himself as a lawman, he became marshal and worked to keep the peace of the wild town of Tombstone. It was during this time that a feud broke out between the lawkeepers and the cowboys, and came to a head when a gang of the Clantons and the McClarys threatened to kill the Earp brothers. This led to the famous gunfight of the OK Corral, in which the Earp brothers and Doc Holliday killed 3 of the cowboy gang. Unlike his brothers and others, Wyatt Earp was not injured in the gunfight. In fact, he was never ever shot and wounded, which sort of led to some mystique in his life and after he died. That shootout, combined with Wyatt Earp's exaggerated storytelling, resulted in him acquiring the reputation of being one of the Wild West's toughest and deadliest gunmen, and also led to countless novels and films. Was he a Freemason? Well, members of his family and friends say that he was. However, there is no record of his membership to be found. In later life, when living in Los Angeles, Wilder became technical advisor on several silent cowboy films and befriended a young actor named Marion Morrison. Does anyone recognise the chap on the end? John Wayne, yes. He told this young actor, Marion Morrison, who later changed his name to John Wayne, stories of the Wild West. And John Wayne later claimed his film portrayal of cowboys and Norman was based on those conversations with Wyatt Earp. Many characters of the old Wild West lived and died by the gun, which was probably a Colt revolver. Now, this is Samuel Colt. As a young man, he was fascinated with guns and explosives and was in fact expelled from school at the age of 14 for experimenting with explosives and causing a lot of damage at the school. However, he went on to be the inventor and designer of the revolver, which replaced the one-shot pistol. It was a revolving cylinder handgun and the origin of successful revolver design from every American gunmaker for many years to come. Colt, well, he totally changed gunmaking by introducing mass production and assembly lines. The company that bears his name is still going strong today. As a Freemason, Colt was a member of St. John's Lodge in Hartford, Connecticut. Native American Indians, although often portrayed as savages, there are many who will maintain that Indians were in fact the victims of the invading white men and were simply defending their lands and way of life. There are also American Masonic authorities who have been impressed with the similarity of certain Indian ceremonies, signs and symbols, as with Freemasonry. The Indians believed in one supreme being, heaven was their happy hunting ground, and the East symbolized life. Sacred and secret words were plentiful, and there was much symbolism. For example, the sign of a triangle was the symbol of immortality. Several tribes acted a death and rebirth ritual in what was called the ghost dance, where someone figuratively dies and falls to the ground. Dancers form a circle around the body, chanting and singing. The dead man is eventually pulled up and is symbolically raised up to a new life. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Many Native Americans actually became Freemasons. This is Tecumseh. The name means shooting star. He was a Shawnee chief who became an ally of the British and formed a confederacy of all the western and southern tribes. With the British, he led his warriors against American troops, as a result of which the British commissioned him as a brigadier general. It was then, when he was with the British Army, that he became a Freemason. He was noted for his humane character, and at the Battle of Fort Meigs, he saved many American lives. It is reported that he recognized a call to him by a Freemason among the Americans who were badly losing the battle. He called and allowed them to surrender and leave the area. This is Conkerpot, chief of the Mohicans, the tribe living near Albany on the Hudson River. It was the powerful, warlike Mohawks who forced the Mohicans to abandon their ancestral lands and caused Conkerpot to cede his lands to the British. He remained friendly with the British, causing the Mohican tribe to aid them during the French and Indian Wars, and as a result was commissioned as a captain in the British Army. Conkerpot later served in George Washington's army during the American Revolution, and it was then that he became a Freemason. This is Tyngen de Negia, meaning he who looks both ways. Very difficult to pronounce his name, and I suppose for this reason the British just called him Brat. He was a fierce warrior who became chief of the Mohawks. He supported the British in the French and Indian War and the American Revolution, and was actually invited to England, where he was well received and admitted into society. It was during this visit to England that Brat was initiated as a Freemason into Hiram's Cliftonian Lodge in London, and was presented with his Masonic apron by King George III. On his return to America, Brat became a key figure in securing the loyalty of other Indian tribes in fighting for the British against the rebels, and it was during the war that he entered the Masonic legend. After the surrender of rebel forces at the Battle of Seaman on the Savannah River, Brant famously saved the life of Captain John McKinstry, a member of Hudson Lodge in New York, who was about to be executed. McKinstry, remembering that Brant was a Freemason, gave a Masonic sign, which Brant recognised. This action secured McKinstry's release and the subsequent good treatment of him and his men. Brant and McKinstry, they remained friends for life. Before we leave the Indians, I must tell you about the Indian who went along to the witch doctor and said, I must tell you, witch doctor, I'm not feeling very well. So the witch doctor said, well, what's wrong with you? How do you feel? Well, he said, it's strange. He said, one day I think I'm a wigwam, and the next day I think I'm a teepee. Ah, said the witch doctor, I understand, you're too tense. Moving on quickly, we now come to the filmmakers and actors who immortalised the Wild West. This is Cecil B. DeMille, Academy Award-winning film director, producer in both silent and sound films. He was renowned for his flamboyance, the showmanship of his movies, and filmed the very first Hollywood and Western movie called The Squaw Man. In time, he would be called the founder of Hollywood. DeMille produced many films during the silent era and continued to discover stars in the sound era, such as Gary Cooper and Charlton Heston. As a Freemason, he was a member of Prince Orange Lodge in New York. Anyone tell me who this is?
Tom Mix.
Gene Autry. Singer, actor, producer, writer. Gene Autry was the first of the singing cowboys in film and on radio, appearing in almost 100 films and making over 600 recordings. His best known song being Back in the Saddle Again. I mentioned singing cowboys. They did actually exist. Their objective was to play the guitar and sing and soothe the cattle herd against the prospect of a stampede, perhaps a thunder was heard in the distance. Gene Autry is also the only person today to receive 5 stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame for contributions in all 5 possible categories. As a Freemason, he was a member of Catoosa Lodge in Oklahoma. His gravestone records that he was a Scottish Rite 33rd degree Freemason. Who called Tom Mix? I won't ask you who this is then. I did once. I said, do you know who this is? Forgetting his name was on the bottom, and someone called out Roy Rogers. Tom Mix, one-time bartender, cowhand, Texas Ranger. He was a superb marksman and rider who went on to become one of the most important cowboy film stars in Hollywood history. His career in movies was famous for his quick action and daredevil stunts, which spanned some 26 years. He made 336 feature films, produced 88, wrote 71, directed 117. I mean, to be fair, they were sort of blockbusters of today. Tom Mix, he died in a car accident in 1940, but remained popular on radio and in comic books for more than a decade after his death. Tom Mix was an active Freemason and a member of Utopia Lodge in California and the 233 Club. This apparently was a Masonic craft demonstration team composed just of actors. He was also a member of the Scottish Rite. Anyone tell me who this is? Tex Ritter. Movie actor, country music singer, popular from the mid-30s into the 1960s. One of the first to follow Gene Autry to Hollywood, where he became an actor with the Hollywood cowboy. Ritter made some 85 films, most of which were westerns. He also had many hit country and western songs and was a member of the Country Music Hall of Fame. One of his most famous recordings was High Noon. As a Freemason, Tex Ritter was a member of Metropolitan Lodge in California and the York Rite Mason. You'll know this fellow, won't you? William Boyd? A bit of a limp? No? Popping on Cassidy? Oh, Saturday morning picture favourite. Yeah. Following work as an extra, Boyd became Popping on Cassidy. He was the hero of some 66 films and some 30 Western novels, many of which are still in print. The films were later adapted for television, which increased his popularity. Boyd, He was a white-haired man, but always dressed completely in black, even his hat. Now this is different from other Wild West heroes, because it was usually the villains who wore black hats. He was soft-spoken, he didn't smoke, he didn't drink, he didn't kiss girls. And in his films, he always tried to capture the villains instead of shooting them. And would always let the other men draw first his gun, if there was a gunfight. He had this fine sense of fair play and was often called upon to deal with those who were taking advantage of honest citizens. Boyd himself said, "I played down violence and tried to make Hoppy a good, honest character." So, why was he called Hopalong? Anyone know? I don't expect any limp answers. Right. He got his name following a shooting incident. He was actually shot in the leg outside of a bank building in the main street of Bermuda, and this left him with a stiff leg and that hoppy type walk. William Boyd was his true name, but of course everyone knew him as Hopalong Cassidy, and that is who he became in real life. He actually became the character at home and wherever he went, being Hopalong Cassidy, his alter ego, in the flesh, and not William Boyd in costume. His own son died of pneumonia at an early age, and because of this, Boyd dedicated much of his later life to helping children. He gave generously to children's charities and would regularly visit children's hospitals and homes as Hopalong Cassidy. Here we have a picture of him visiting a shrine or hospital together with, well, there's a shrine next to him wearing his fez. William Boyd, he didn't sing, dance, race cars. He was simply Hopalong Cassidy. Good, honest, tough and caring. Outside his films and his hobby, he smiled and was everybody's friend and favourite cowboy. Was he a Freemason? Many say that he was, but as is often the case in America, where records are not kept so well, there is no record to confirm it. I've included him really because, having given this talk a few times, everyone seems to expect me to include him. So there he is, Hopalong Cassidy. And you know this is danger. Roy Rogers, the singer and cowboy actor known as King of the Cowboys, he and his wife, Dale Evans, his golden Palomino horse, Rigger, and his German Shepherd dog, Bullet, were featured in more than 100 movies and the Roy Rogers Show. That show ran on radio for 9 years before moving to television for another 8 years. One of his films was named Tall in the Saddle. An ironic title, perhaps, because he was only 5'6" tall and was often filmed from ground level to make him a bit taller. But Roy Rogers was the biggest money-making Western star for many years. He always wore a white hat and never killed anyone in his films, always disarming his enemies by shooting them in the wrist or the shoulder. As a Freemason, he was a member of the Hollywood Masonic Lodge in California. Throughout his life, he was an active Freemason and Shriner, and was noted for his generous support of all their charities. There is a story that one day he rode into town with a prisoner, and the prisoner was wrapped up in brown paper. And the sheriff came up and said, "Roy, Rogers, you've got a prisoner." "Yes," he said. "What have you arrested him for?" "Well," he said, "look at him, rustling." Anyway, can anyone tell me who this is? I'll give you a clue. His name's Clayton Moore. Okay, now you'll know. Lone Ranger. That masked Texas Ranger, his Indian companion, Tonto. They fought injustice. The character, well, was extremely popular with the television show running for some 10 years, as well as to be seen in comic books, on movies. The Lone Ranger, usually called Tonto, his Indian companion, Kemo Sabi. Now, I'm told that means trusted friend, although there are a lot of people who feel that it's got other meanings. However, these catchphrases, his trademark silver bullets, the theme music from the William Tell Overture, all helped to make the series so very popular. Departing on his white stallion Silver, the Lone Ranger would shout, "Hi ho, Silver away!" and then galloped off. And there was someone on the side who would usually ask, who was that last man anyway? He was born Jack Carlton Warburton, changed his name to Clayton when he arrived in Hollywood. He was a one-time model and circus performer, worked as a stunt actor before getting small acting roles, and finally winning the starring role in one of the first shows to be filmed exclusively for television. More in later life lived near Los Angeles, California, and he was a York White Freemason. Now, there is a story that he and his Indian friend were out one day on one of their adventures, and they were attacked by Indians. And they fought and fought them off, and after the battle, Tonto had arrows. He had one in his leg, one in his side, one in his shoulder, his arm. Looked round to the Lone Ranger and said, Lone Ranger, there's something wrong here. I've got all these arrows in me. You've none in you whatsoever. Why is that? So the Lone Ranger said, well, it's down to the aftershave I use, this arrowless. They get worse. Who can tell me who this is? Randolph Scott. He became an accountant after graduating from the University of North Carolina. However, his most enduring image is that of the tall in the saddle Western hero on his Palomino horse Stars. Now, he starred in well over 100 movies, more than 60 of which were Westerns. Two of his most popular films being The Last of the Mohicans and Western Union. He was a tall man, 6'2", lanky, handsome, displaying this easygoing charm and southern drawl in his early films, which they say helped offset his limitations as an actor. As he matured, however, Scott's acting improved while his features became burnished and leathery, turning him into the ideal, strong, silent type of hero. As a Freemason, Scott was a member of Phalanx Lodge in the hometown of Charlotte, North Carolina, and he was an active Shriner. Now, you'll know this, won't you? Fred's nearly there. Glenfold, that's it. His real name was William, but always called Glenn. He appeared in 106 films, many of which were westerns, and also starred in several television series. While in the military, he was a noted hero, and he received numerous medals and commendation, including the Medal of Honor, the French Legion of Honor, 2 Navy commendation medals, various campaign medals and honors. Ford was also the first group of Allied servicemen to enter the Dachau concentration camp in Germany. This is near to the end of the Second World War. While there, they were made aware of another women's concentration camp nearby, that of Fernwald. And their prompt action in securing food and medical supplies is reputed to have saved the lives of some 6,000 women. Many of the women who subsequently had babies named their newborn babies William, Ford's real first name, in recognition of his action. As a Freemason, Glenn Ford was initiated in Palisades Lodge in Santa Monica. He was also a member of Riviera Lodge in California, and as you can see, wearing his fez, he was an active Shriner. Do you recognise this chap? More of a singer than an actor. He did do acting. Hank Williams, American country and western singer, songwriter, musician, regarded as one of the most important country music artists of all time. Although he only recorded 35 singles, they were all top of the Billboard country western bestsellers chart. Born in Mount Olive, Alabama, his real birth name was Hiram King Williams. Now those first names are not surprising, since his father Alonzo Williams was a Freemason, and also his mother was a Freemason, being a member of York Eastern Star. And he was named after King Tyre from the Masonic legend we used, but informally changed his name to Hank, believing it would perhaps be better for his music career. Hank Williams was a member of a lodge in Georgiana, Alabama, and is known to have sung songs with Masonic words and content. How about this chap? Their lives. Yeah, that's right. Actor, writer, folk singer. As an actor, his work included films and television, including many westerns. He was one of 6 children, born to a farming family in Jasper County, Illinois. However, while he was still very young, he dropped out of school and he actually hitchhiked all around America, doing odd jobs, street singing, but more importantly, collecting songs. As a singer, he later recorded more than 100 albums during his life, often with a folk and country and western flavour. Burlive's involvement in Freemasonry came quite naturally because he was born into a family of Freemasons and he joined the Order of Demolay as a youth. Then after moving to California, he was initiated into Magnolia, the Cumbrae Lodge, and later joined the Scottish Rite in Santa Barbara, California, where he was actively involved in many Masonic orders, including the Shriners. His death was marked by a memorial service held by the Grand Lodge of California. His wife Dorothy, following what she feels would have been the wish of her husband, had a Masonic emblem engraved on his monument. She said he loved Freemasonry, and I know this is what he would have wished. Now, I started off talking about the Battle of the Alamo, and will conclude with a well-known actor who played Davy Crockett in the 1960 film The Alamo. Can anyone tell me who that might be? Absolutely right. First prize. John Wayne, film actor, director, producer, typifies rugged masculinity, doesn't he? And became an enduring American icon. He is famous for his distinctive voice, his walk, his height. He was also later to be known for his traditional American political views. He's a big man. In fact, he was big when he was born because he weighed some 13 pounds. And he was born with the name Marion Morrison. Now, he later changed that to John Wayne, but was usually known as the Duke. He got that nickname Duke when he was a boy because he had a dog with the same name. They were always together and became known as Big Duke and Little Duke. He was a promising American football player and won a scholarship, but after 2 years, an injury ended his playing days. He worked as an extra and prop man in the film industry and gradually managed to get more work, eventually appearing or starring in over 200 films in his 50-year career, many of which were westerns, such as Stagecoach, Red River, and The Alamo. And of course, John Wayne won an Oscar for one of his last films, that memorable western, True Grit. In the film, Mattie Ross attempts to hire him to track down the killer of her father. There's an interesting scene early in the film when Mattie is given her father's personal effects. Among the items visible is her father's pocket watch, showing the square and compasses on it. As a Freemason, John Wayne was a member of Marion McDonald Lodge in Tucson, Arizona. Members of the lodge now wear a Masonic apron, which on the lower panel has the words Duke's Lodge. John Wayne was a member of the Alt-Right and a Shriner. He was very well known for his active involvement in Freemasonry and his general support of all Masonic charities. He was also a very active Shriner. And perhaps a suitable person and a Freemason for me to conclude with. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mike. I hope you all enjoyed the presentation. And again, I would like to thank Mike for coming along. Marvellous, absolutely marvellous. I really enjoyed it.
I wonder if there's any questions that's all while we're here.
We did have a question online asking why you're not dressed in a Wild West outfit.
I was going to ride my horse, but
That was Nick Ray, so you can have a word with him afterwards.
typical.
I'm a reenactor and I've got Wild West, so I could have come with Wild West.
You should have done.
I should have done tonight.
I actually presented this talk at Surbiton at the Masonic Lodge, the Storm Masters, and they did dress up. All the waitresses were dressed as Indians, Gauls, and the master had a cowboy hat, who had badges. Oh, it was very good. Real fun.
Just one thing, more an observation and a question.
Yeah.
I went to the Alamo last year,
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
and although you got the plaque of the 45 main ones,
Yes.
there's another plaque of about 60
Is there
Englishmen.
60 Englishmen?
Englishmen, Scotsmen.
Oh, I see.
They were bought because the Mexicans offered the land, they wanted it.
Yeah.
farmed. And when they all come over to the new well, they all flooded down there. And they're all Freemasons. They all died there.
Really? Oh, terrible times.
And the other thing, dear old John Wayne, finished 3 degrees in 3 days.
Good
Because
one.
he learned his lines.
They didn't argue with him either.
Yeah, I've got a question. Is there anything, I've got a few pictures that I pulled off the internet yesterday. Was there anything in the room that Frank and Jesse James were doing?
I think I've researched a lot of these, and certainly they didn't throw up. So I can only say, but it's very difficult in America because there's so few records. In latter years it's different, but in those early years, if you can imagine moving to a territory where it's almost virgin land, if they made someone a Freemason, why would they start writing things down? It's very difficult. So they could have been, but as they were outlawed, I shouldn't think so. We went down. Yes.
Can you tell us something about the connection between Freemasonry and American presidents? You may have touched this before we came in, but
No, I didn't, but obviously it started off with George Washington, who was obviously a Freemason, and the American Constitution is not based on Freemasonry, but you can see similarities as you read through it. In America, every state has its own Grand Lodge, whereas here we're the Grand Lodge of England. And they wanted to make George Washington Grand Master of all America, but the Grand Masters of the individual lodges weren't that keen. They didn't want to lose it. And several presidents have obviously been Freemasons. More recently, I'm not certain, but in the past, I would imagine it was probably 9 or 10 of that. I can't tell you the exact number, but any questions?
Okay, ladies and gents, can I ask you again to put your hands together for... Thank you very much, Nancy. Thank you for coming along today. If you can, in future, we will, the Middlesex Light Blues Club will put on more events if we can. And if you can, please encourage your junior members that are light blues to come along. I know we've got a couple of dark blues here today that said that we're going to try and bring some, but we'll let down at the last minute. But if you can bring your light blues club members along, please do. Please encourage them to support us and the club, because we've put on quite a few events like this if we can. And again, once again, thank you very much, Mike, for giving us a very, very interesting time. There is tea and coffee if you want it outside when we